Every love story begins with a promise. Hers began with a bruise. On the eve of her wedding, Hazel was meant to be perfect, the polished bride of a billionaire heir. But beneath the diamonds and designer lace was a secret no one saw, a woman living in fear of the man who swore to love her. That day she ran, barefoot, bleeding, the taste of her own blood still sharp on her tongue. And as she stumbled through the quiet streets, she prayed, not for love, not for help, but for freedom. Fate heard her, but it didn't send an angel, it sent him, Hyunjo. A man with a scar that told 1,000 stories, stories of violence, of loyalty, of a life once drenched in darkness. Once, he was the dragon, a name whispered in every back alley of Seoul. Two souls, both exiled from peace, both desperate for redemption, collided that night under the same cold sky. She was running from the monster who wore a ring. He was running from the monster he used to be. And what began as a rescue would soon become a war between love and vengeance, past and future, sin and salvation. This is the story of a bride who fled the altar, and the man the world once called a demon, who became her only refuge. Let's begin. The punch lands with a sickening crack. Hazel hits the floor hard, the world spinning around her as the thick, expensive rug muffles her fall. The taste of iron fills her mouth. Blood, her own blood. Above her, Rohun towers, perfectly dressed, perfectly composed. The kind of man who can smile for the cameras while hiding the monster underneath. "It's just one day to our wedding, Hazel," he snarls, his voice slicing through the silence. "And you still don't know how to act." He points at her split lip, disgust flashing across his face like she's ruined his masterpiece. "Now look what you made me do," he says coldly. "Get up. Go fix yourself. You can't be a bride looking like that." Hazel's knees tremble as she pushes herself up, tears mixing with blood on her cheek. Every part of her aches, but worse than the pain is the humiliation, the quiet, endless cycle of love twisted into control. Then, like clockwork, the switch flips. Rohan's voice softens, his tone suddenly gentle, almost tender. He kneels beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face with the same hand that struck her. "I love you, baby," he whispers. "You know I love you. Why do you always make me behave this way?" She doesn't answer. She never does. She's learned that silence is safer. When he finally walks away, her reflection in the gilded mirror looks like a stranger. Swollen lips, red eyes, a ghost wearing someone else's engagement ring. And in that silence, a single thought burns through the fog of fear. "I'm never going to marry you, Rohun." The words slip from her lips before she can stop them, barely a whisper, but enough. Rohan freezes. He turns. The fury is instant. Another slap, sharp and merciless. "I don't want to see this mess when I get back," he shouts, and the door slams behind him, leaving her trembling on the rug. The room is silent again. She's alone. Finally. Hazel stares at the doorway, her chest heaving. How did it come to this? The best graduating student of her university, the girl everyone said would conquer the world, now trapped like a bird in a gilded cage. Rohun had promised her love, protection, a future wrapped in luxury. But what he gave her was a prison with golden walls. And tomorrow, that prison would become permanent. Tomorrow, she was supposed to say, "I do." She presses her hands together, remembering last night, the tears, the whisper in the dark. "God, please," she had prayed, voice trembling. "Get me out of here. Show me a sign. Lead me to where I'm supposed to be." Now as she lifts her head, something catches her attention. The faintest sound. Silence. The door outside, usually guarded, is unprotected. The security guard, the one who never leaves his post, is gone. Her heart races. This is it. This is the sign. She moves before doubt can stop her. She slips on her shoes, grabs nothing, no phone, no money, just courage, and pushes the door open. The hallway stretches ahead like freedom itself. Down the corridor, the guard stands distracted, back turned, his phone pressed to his ear. Hazel doesn't hesitate. She runs. The sound of her footsteps echo through the marble floors, louder, faster. Then comes the shout behind her. "Miss Hazel, come back now!" The chase begins. She bursts through the front door, into the bright world she hasn't seen in weeks. The sun stings her eyes, the wind tears through her hair, but she keeps running. Because anything is better than a lifetime with Rohun. Behind her the guard calls again, his voice fading as she disappears down the street, breathless and free for the first time. And somewhere across the city, at that very same moment, another broken soul sits on his front steps, Hyunjo Nam. His hands hang loosely between his knees, eyes staring at nothing. His wedding was supposed to be in 2 days. Was. Last night, everything ended with a text. "I can't marry an ex-Mafia, Hyunjo. Not someone with that past, not with that ugly scar." But Hyunjo knew the truth. Gina had found someone new, a rich CEO who could give her the life he never could. She had used him, drained him, left him with nothing but an old wound that hurt more than the scar across his cheek. He had given her everything, even half his savings to pay for her mother's cancer treatments. And now that her mother was cured, Gina was gone. "After everything I did for you," he whispers, voice cracking into the empty street. He closes his eyes, gripping the silver ring still on his finger. For the first time in years, he bows his head and prays for peace, for purpose, for a sign that he hasn't been abandoned. And somewhere, miles away, a terrified woman runs barefoot through the city, guided by the same desperate prayer. God, it seems, had just begun to answer, a blur of motion. Hyunjo looks up just in time to see a woman sprint past his house, barefoot, breathless, her sobs tearing through the quiet morning air. Her face is streaked with blood and tears, her dress clinging to her as she stumbles forward like she's running from hell itself. Then he hears it. Heavy footsteps, a man shouting, "Stop! You're dead when Rohun gets his hands on you." The words slice through the air like a threat meant for everyone to fear. Something ignites inside Hyunjo, a spark buried deep in the ashes of his old life. He doesn't think. He just moves. The years of violence he swore to leave behind rise up in an instant. By the time the security guard corners the woman against a rusted fence, Hyunjo is already there. "Mind your business," the guard snaps, shoving him hard. Fatal mistake. Hyunjo's body reacts on instinct. One precise, brutal motion. His fist connects with the man's jaw, the sound sharp and final. The guard drops before he even hits the pavement, his body crumpling into silence. Hyunjo exhales, his heartbeat steady. Too steady. The part of him he tried to bury is awake again. Then he turns and sees her. Hazel. Her chest heaves, eyes wide with disbelief. For a second she looks like she's about to scream. But then her knees buckle, her body collapsing from exhaustion and shock. Hyunjo rushes forward, catching her before she hits the ground. She's trembling, her skin cold against his hands. Without another thought, he lifts her into his arms and carries her inside. Hours pass. When Hazel finally wakes, she's lying on a soft couch beneath a warm blanket. The air smells faintly of soap and coffee. A low hum from a ceiling fan fills the silence. Then she sees him, the man from before. He's sitting beside her, dipping a clean cloth into a bowl of water, gently dabbing the dried blood from her face, the cuts Rohun left behind. His movements are careful, almost reverent. "You're safe now," he says quietly, his voice calm, low, certain. "Just rest." She stares at him, at the scar. It runs from his forehead, across his right eye, down to his cheek. A mark that should frighten her. But it doesn't. Instead, she feels an odd peace, the kind of safety that comes not from softness, but from strength. When she sits up, Hyunjo notices. His dark eyes meet hers, and for a moment, there's silence. Just two wounded souls studying each other's scars. "How does a lady like you end up with injuries like this?" he finally asks, voice low but steady. "Running for your life." And so Hazel tells him. She starts from the beginning, the story of a brilliant international student who fell for the charming heir to $1 billion empire. Rohun, the man who said all the right things, made all the right promises, and wrapped his lies in luxury. She tells Hyunjo about the dinners, the flowers, the gifts that came like clockwork, how the world saw a fairy tale, while she lived a nightmare behind closed doors. Her voice breaks when she recalls the first time he hit her, how she had defended him, how she had told herself it was a mistake, that love sometimes hurt, that it was her fault. "But I should have known," she whispers through tears. "All the smiles, the gifts, they were just a mask. And beneath that mask was a beast, a wicked lover." She wipes her face, shaking her head. "I thought I was intelligent, but I was too dumb to see things for what they were." Hyunjo doesn't interrupt. He just listens, jaw tight, hands clenched, his breath steady but heavy. He's seen men do terrible things. He's done terrible things himself. But this, a man beating a woman he claims to love, this he cannot comprehend. Something in him shifts. He doesn't know this woman. Yet, as he watches her cry, he sees his own reflection. The same pain, the same betrayal, the same prayer whispered into the dark, asking why good hearts get broken. And for the first time in a long time, Hyunjo speaks. He tells her his story. The story of how he tried to build a new life after leaving the underworld. How he worked, cleaned his hands, fell in love, only to be abandoned because of the very scars that proved he had survived. Two strangers, both broken by love, sitting in the quiet hum of a tiny apartment, neither realizing that their meeting was no accident. It was an answer. He tells her about Gina, about the nights he sat in hospital waiting rooms, about empty pockets and borrowed money, about paying for a mother's treatments while learning how little loyalty could cost a man. He tells her about the text that arrived last night, the single line that turned his whole life inside out and left him jilted 2 days before his wedding. Hazel listens, the pain of her own wounds receding into the background. Compassion softens her face. She reaches for something ordinary, a question about the scar on his face, and he hesitates. Slowly, Hyunjo explains. He speaks of a life he vowed to leave, gang alleys and harsh bargains, the brutal rules that shaped him. He tells her about lying beside his dying mother and promising, in that sterile hospital light, to walk away. That promise cost him blood and enemies, and the bright, cruel slash across his skin. He waits for judgment. He expects fear. He prepares for the world to close like a fist. But Hazel does not flinch. Her eyes hold neither fear nor scorn. They hold a quiet, open pain, the kind that recognizes another wounded heart. If they'd known each other longer, she would have crossed the room and hugged him without thinking. Hyunjo does not tell her everything. He leaves out the old name people whispered in fear. Hyunjo the dragon. He does not say he once sat at the head of a table where men counted power like money. He does not say how many nights he woke to the taste of iron and regret. For now, the simplest truth will have to do. He left that world because his mother made him, and the scar is the proof. Night falls across the city like spilled ink. In a different part of town, Rohun reads the security report with a face that tightens into pure fury. The guard's failure is not just incompetence, it is humiliation. The wedding is tomorrow. His father's voice, cold and cutting, echoes in his head. The word useless hovers like a threat. He calls Hazel, and the call is venom made sound. He tells her she has until morning to return. If she does not come back, he promises she will be broken in a way that will keep her from running again. He warns that the man who interfered will pay with his life. He reminds her cruelly that the wedding is tomorrow. Hazel's body trembles, but she is not in Rohun's house. She is not alone in a gilded room. She sits wrapped in a blanket across from a man who has just become protector by the force of a single choice. Her voice shakes, but the words are steady. She will not go back. Not ever. The refusal tastes like terror and freedom at the same time. Hyunjo watches. A slow heat rises behind his ribs. Not the old anger for power, but something sharper. The hot, steady fire of honor. In his old life there were codes. You did not beat women. You did not terrorize the helpless. Such acts were the ultimate sign of weakness. He cannot stand by. He takes the phone from Hazel's trembling hand and listens to the other end scream. When he speaks, his voice is calm, controlled, cold as steel. He tells Rohun the one thing that will cut deeper than threats. Stay away from Hazel. She is not his possession. She is under Hyunjo's care now. He ends the call. On the line, Rohun is stunned, furious, and small. In the quiet apartment, two strangers exchange a look that needs no words. A boundary has been crossed, a claim has been made. The city holds its breath. The battle line has been drawn. The next morning arrives softly, sunlight slipping through half-drawn curtains, painting quiet gold over the room. Hazel stirs. For a moment she feels warmth. She's wrapped in clean sheets, wearing one of Hyunjo's shirts that smells faintly of soap and rain. She turns her head. Hyunjo is asleep on the couch, one arm hanging over the side, the other resting over his chest. His face looks peaceful, almost boyish, in sleep. For the first time in months, Hazel allows herself to breathe. For a heartbeat, there is peace. Then a sound splits the calm like glass shattering. A voice, loud, familiar, full of venom. Hazel! Her blood runs cold. The voice pierces her to the core. She scrambles to the window, heart hammering. And there he is, Rohun, standing in front of Hyunjo's house as if he owns the morning. Impeccably dressed in a $1,000 suit, hair slicked back, eyes burning with rage. Behind him, a line of men, rough and hard-looking, their bodies tense with violence. He came to drag her back, to make her his possession again. Hazel's body starts to shake. Her mouth goes dry. Every nerve in her body screams run. But Hyunjo doesn't move with fear. He rises from the couch and meets her gaze with a calm that steadies the air itself. Stay inside, he says simply, his voice low and certain. Then he walks to the door, opens it, and steps outside, barefoot, unarmed, his scar catching the morning light. He stands between his home and the men, between Hazel and her nightmare. She's not going with you, he says, tone quiet but final. Rohun smirks, eyes dark with contempt. You think you can stop me? You think you can save her? Hyunjo's voice remains calm, but it carries the kind of stillness that comes before a storm. I would rather bleed to death on this ground than let you touch her again. Hazel watches through the window, heart pounding against her ribs. What is he doing? This man, this stranger, is willing to die for her, for someone he barely knows. Fear twists inside her chest, but it isn't for Rohun anymore. It's for Hyunjo. She rushes to the door, her trembling hand on the knob, and steps outside. And that's when Rohun sees her, standing just behind Hyunjo, wearing Hyunjo's shirt, the symbol of another man's protection, and in Rohun's mind, another man's claim. The sight tears the last thread of his sanity. His face contorts with rage, his voice cracking as he screams, "You dare sleep with another man? On our wedding day? Get her and kill him! Kill him!" The order bursts through the quiet street like gunfire. The goons surge forward, weapons flashing in their hands. But then, a pause. The man leading them, a broad-shouldered gangster named Soo-hwan, narrows his eyes. He looks at Hyunjo more closely. The tattoos, the scar, the calm in his eyes. His breath catches in his throat. "No," he whispers, voice trembling. "It can't be. That's Hyunjo the dragon." The words fall like thunder, and then Soo-hwan screams, a sound born from pure terror. "It's him! Run! Run for your lives!" Panic spreads like fire. In an instant, the whole group scatters, men tripping over each other, crashing into cars, scrambling into alleys just to escape. Within seconds, the street is empty, except for Rohun. He stands frozen, confusion written all over his face. What just happened? Hazel thinks, her mind spinning. Then Rohun's confusion shifts to fear, deep, bone-deep fear, as Hyunjo starts walking toward him. Each step is slow, controlled, inevitable. This isn't a fight, it's judgment. Hyunjo reaches him, grabs the collar of his expensive suit, and lifts him clean off the ground as though he weighs nothing. His voice isn't loud, it doesn't need to be. It's the kind of calm that makes even silence afraid. "You're lucky I made a promise to my mother," Hyunjo says quietly, "but if I ever see your face again, I'll give you a scar to match mine." The words hit harder than any punch. Rohun trembles, gasping for breath, eyes darting like a trapped animal's. Then, humiliation. A dark stain spreads across his designer trousers. The smell says it all. Hyunjo lets him go, disgust flashing in his eyes. Rohun falls to the ground, coughing, broken. The man who once called himself powerful now looks small. Just another coward pretending to be king. And then Hazel steps forward. She walks slowly, each step deliberate, steady. She looks down at the man who haunted her dreams, the one who made her beg, cry, bleed, and she feels nothing. No fear, no hate, just pity. Her voice is soft, but it cuts through the quiet like a blade. "I will never be your punching bag again, Rohun. You will never harm me again." Rohun scrambles backward, hands shaking. He gets up, stumbles into his car, and speeds off, tires screeching, the sound fading into distance. He is never seen again. Silence falls. Hazel turns back to Hyunjo, the man who had stood between her and death, who faced a monster without lifting a weapon, whose calm alone had ended her nightmare. For the first time in forever, she smiles through tears. He isn't a knight in shining armor. He's something rarer, a man who became her peace. After the storm, silence settled like a soft blanket over the house. The chaos was gone, replaced by an almost sacred calm. Hazel sat by the window, sunlight spilling gently across her face, and for the first time in years and she could breathe. But for Hyunjo, the calm came with a weight. The next day was supposed to be his wedding day. And though that world had already crumbled, the people, the guests, the families, the expectations, still remained. Hazel watched him quietly as he buttoned his suit jacket in front of the mirror. His movements were deliberate, steady, yet behind his calm eyes was something that looked almost like pain. You're still going?" Hazel asked softly. He didn't look at her right away. He simply adjusted his tie, exhaled deeply, then nodded. "It was my wedding," he said quietly. "People will gather. It would be dishonorable not to face them and apologize myself." Hazel's heart ached. He was a good man, the kind of man who faced storms with his head held high. He picked up his jacket and walked toward the door, but then he stopped. For a moment, this man who had once been feared across the country looked almost uncertain. When he turned to her, his voice trembled slightly. "I know you probably want to go back to your place," he said, his words fumbling awkwardly. "I mean, you just met me, but maybe when I get back we could have lunch or something. I'm not saying you should stay forever, I just..." Hazel's lips curved into a small smile. It was soft, warm, and unguarded, the first real smile she'd allowed herself in years. "I'll be here," she said simply. "Go. Face them." And just like that, the weight lifted from his shoulders. A quiet smile spread across his face, relieved, grateful. He nodded once firmly and stepped out into the sunlight. That afternoon, the headlines were merciless. "Former Mafia boss abandoned at the altar." They splashed across every tabloid, every gossip site. But Hyunjo didn't care. He had faced worse storms in his life. What mattered wasn't the noise outside. It was the quiet peace that had begun to grow inside him. 1 year later, the hall shimmered with gold light and laughter. Music floated through the air, soft and full of joy. The tables were lined with flowers, the guests dressed in their finest. Laughter echoed as glasses clinked together. At one table, Soo-hwan, the same man who had once run in terror from Hyunjo, was laughing loudly, raising his glass in a toast. "To the dragon," he shouted with a grin. "May his fire never fade." The crowd cheered. It wasn't fear anymore, it was respect. At the head of the hall, Hyunjo stood tall. The scar on his face remained, but it no longer spoke of violence. Now it spoke of survival, of redemption. His eyes were calm, his smile unguarded. He was a man who had found peace. The music shifted. The hall grew quiet. Every head turned toward the doorway. And then she appeared. Hazel. No longer the frightened girl in a torn dress, trembling under a man's shadow. She walked forward in a gown that shimmered like morning light, her shoulders straight, her steps graceful and sure. Her eyes met Hyunjo's, and in that single glance the entire room disappeared. When she reached him, she took his hands in hers. The priest's words were a blur. There were no more ghosts to face, no chains to break. There was only love. And when the priest finally smiled and said, "You may now kiss the bride," Hyunjo pulled her close. Hazel's eyes filled with tears, not of pain, but of overwhelming joy. Around them, the crowd cheered, but they didn't hear it. As their lips met, the world fell away. Two broken souls, two answered prayers, finally and forever, made whole.
And that's the end of today's story. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd love to hear your thoughts, maybe about the storyline, the characters, a favorite scene, or even the ending. Drop your comments below. I always look forward to reading them. If you'd like to support the channel, please like, share, and subscribe. It really means a lot. I remain Silver, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay well. May God bless you abundantly. And always remember, Silver loves you.